We'll be streaming live now, folks. Okay. Good day, all, and welcome to the August 30th Professional Services Enablement session. Today, a fairly quick session. Michael Leopard, Senior Practice Manager, Professional Services, will be going some of our new delivery project setup and automation. Should be a quick one today. So without further hesitation, I will kick it off and hand it to you. Michael, take it away.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, so the topic today is I wanted to go over a quick review of how we set up customer delivery projects right now as of beginning of Q3 for FY25. So for the agenda, I want to cover kind of four main points. Why do we manage projects in GitLab? How do we generate those projects? What is automatically generated as a starting point for our delivery teams? And then where do those projects get generated? First things first, why do we manage projects in GitLab? I think it's dogfooding at its finest. So we spent several years in professional services trying out different ways of managing projects through various methods like spreadsheets or Google Docs, external tools. And this led to a lot of tool sprawl. It led to maintenance issues. There's a lack of standardization. It caused challenges with reporting. And so as our plan functionality became more feature rich over the last couple of years, NPS started to grow a lot more rapidly. We decided to improve our standardization and work towards going all in on GitLab Plant and leverage more of GitLab for our day-to-day operations. Now, that's not to say that we still aren't using things like Google Docs or spreadsheets as supplementary tools. They're just no longer going to be our primary method for managing projects. So how do we generate delivery projects in GitLab? We use GitLab to generate GitLab projects. So we have an internal GitLab project where we use TOML files to house project metadata based off of the statement of work and some extra other pieces as we're getting through the staffing process. We use merge requests to stage the data, do a final review, and then once we merge those project TOML files into our automation project, CI/CD pipeline kicks off and runs some Python scripts to generate the data. So what is specifically generated in that automation? It creates a customer group based on the customer's name. It creates a customer project, which if you've heard us say the phrase CP around, that's the core component there. We automatically generate a series of project issues, issue boards, labels, and we create a series of activity epics. So let's take a quick look at an example of what gets generated. So this is a just test project and group I put together earlier this morning. Customer name is Acme Corp, and then it's associated with a statement of work project. This statement of work that we linked to it had 5 different activities that were mapped into GitLab epics. A series of labels are automatically created. I marked myself as the project manager for this project. So there's labels that were auto-created based on my GitLab handle. And then we can see all the different activities. And if we go into a specific activity epic, we can see the exact language that came out of the statement of work. So we try to tie our SOWs directly into the epics, so at least we have a good reference point of what's going to be delivered. Going into the project, we can see the name. The standard setup is SOW followed by its ID. We automatically create a little README that shows a link to our internal customer epic. And if we link any delivery kits into the automation, which I did in this case, we have a link out to the delivery kit I'm using for some of those reference points. Specifically, what that means is if we link a delivery kit, we add a series of issue templates automatically to these projects. So in this case, it was a migration engagement, or at least part of it's migration related. So we have some issue templates at our disposal as we're working through delivering the project and getting the migration piece of it sorted out. We automatically generate 4 issues right now: a project management issue, an iteration retrospective issue, a project-wide retrospective, and then a RAID log. This is also, since I pushed this to a test location, we're missing a couple of pieces of data that would show up in a production setup, but we can just see kind of how this gets generated. Also notice that all the project managers get auto-assigned to the issues, the RAID log and the project management issue. We also automatically create issue boards. In this case, one of the things that's missing, since this is set up as a test, we're missing our RAID board itself, which helps to break apart more complex a more complex setup in the project. So right now it's just a prioritization board. But this is all based off of a TOML file I wrote up, ran through a pipeline, and then it generated it. So this is basically the starting point when we're ready to deliver a project. And I think this also provides a good entry point for a lot of customers who may be new to GitLab, because they have this sort of a playground to test out certain features too, because this is related to, you can use the Git repo for storing specific files. You can use the CI/CD pipelines if you want to test running something. You could even run a security scan on some code if you felt like it. It's ultimate level group and project. Now to go one level deeper, we can look at the project metadata. So this is kind of what we need on the practice management side when we're building out these projects, and also for the PMOs as they build out the project metadata files. Basically, we just need customer name, an Epic ID, which is linked to an internal Epic. For partners, you all don't have to worry about that. The cantata URL, which is just what we link to for the time tracking purposes. Who is the assigned project manager? So we create the labels accordingly. And then a list of activities to build out the epics. In terms of optional fields, and I'll go into this a little more in depth in a couple minutes, list of project members. That's really only required for like a specific use case. That's why it's marked as optional most of the time. Delivery kits, any of our publicly available delivery kits can be linked into the project metadata. Private is a just a Boolean field. You set to true or false. If it's true, we generate the project data in a different location. And then group ID is if we want to generate a project in a specific subgroup that our automation has access to. This is very in the weeds. To be clear, this is data that in the future will be fully automated, and also it's only relevant for our internal PMO team and for practice management, but just so you can kind of understand what the inner workings of this process looks like. This is very small. Sorry about that. It's hard to fit an example TOML file in to our to the slide. So in this case, this is just showing kind of the inner workings of what a project could look like. So it's got the example metadata, and it shows that we are mapping the data from the statement of work, gets converted directly into Markdown. And then this is a one-for-one pass into a GitLab issue. So what we're looking at is an example of a health check SKU getting delivered. So we just have the customer name, the Epic ID, the project manager assigned to it, and then just the single Epic, since it's just a SKU service. So now in terms of supported project locations, here are the automated or semi-automated options that we have when we're going about delivering a project. There is an internal GitLab professional services group. This is our default setup. It exists under GitLab.com, and it's ideally there to kind of take advantage of or help follow our transparency and collaboration values here at GitLab. Want to make it so that there's the availability for customers to have an easier way to work with some of our other folks in the organization. So if we want to pull in someone from product or from engineering to help out, this is a much lower barrier to entry for them to help out the customer directly if something like that were to come up. And it just makes it easier because it's as transparent as possible internal to GitLab. The next location is a sibling group to the internal GitLab professional services group. It's the GitLab partner collaboration. So for the partners on the call, this is the default place where you all will be working out of. You will be given explicit access to the specific subgroups under this group. But in this case, that's kind of just where you will likely be working out of most of the time. Now, in the event that a customer wants a more private, confidential location, there is a more private GitLab professional services group that sits outside of those are standard GitLab group hierarchies. And these require access to be granted on an explicit basis. And the projects can contain both GitLab team members and partners, just depending on how we staff the project. To be more clear about who has access to the private GitLab professional services group, at the top level, the only teams that have access to it would be practice management. That's 4 of us, primarily just so we can get the automation through, and the PMO team, just because they're the ones that are going to be managing all the different projects. And then a fourth place This is a more semi-automated situation, is the customer's GitLab.com namespace. So in the event a customer wants the customer project to move directly into their own namespace, we can do that. It basically requires us to generate the project and then just do a project or a group transfer. And then the access is managed by the customer and the GitLab PM. This is the most locked down version. It's also the most difficult to pull in other members of GitLab directly into some of their issues. So there's trade-offs and benefits and trade-offs to any of these options. Now, in terms of areas of improvement / future iterations, we're iterating towards a smoother overall operation of delivering services to customers. So four points I wanted to bring up. We want to improve the project generation automation. Right now, it's a little more manual. There's a couple of people involved in the process, and we want to make it so one of our main integration points is fully automated. We can click a button and then it generates at least the majority of the TOML file for us to work out of. The next step would be improve support for work streams. So this is for larger projects that we want to group together a series of activities into parallel efforts. And that's what a work stream would be. So we can have multiple work streams going on at the same time. Right now, we can kind of support it with our automation, but it just requires more manual work. And we're working to automate that to make it easier to get projects off the ground faster. A third piece would be reduced manual intervention of TOML files. This is just another integration point for us. Specifically, let's say we address those first 2 points and they're all working as expected. There's still a couple of fields we have to manually set up that we would like to automate. So things like who's the staffed project manager, who are the project members, and where do we want to actually deploy this project to? Right now, those first 2 points won't really address those extra fields. And then finally, we want to work on improving the project metrics and reporting as we go through delivering projects. And that's just going to come with time and understanding kind of what specific pieces of this setup are used and how we can better track some of the different metrics there. So that'd be quick. Wasn't too bad, under my 15-minute mark. Any questions?
So, for the enablement for partners, then, I would love to. I know that we're figuring out future tense of all the things, but for enablement and resources for the partners, on like how to use it, like through examples. I was gonna ask like, oh, could we have an example project? But it looks like we have an Acme project, which is really exciting. But for partners for now, PM specifically, is the idea to go through, would it be appropriate to go through your team or a combination of the PM in your team? I'm just a little bit worried about like our backlog and our ability to help out future PMs or PMs, partner PMs rather. So it's okay to go through you guys for the time being while we work on the automation. I know that's like a lot of effort, but
Yeah, I think for now that makes sense. Because the most important piece we need is the statement of work itself, ideally as a Google Doc. So if that's what needs to get provided, we can move pretty quickly.
okay.
And yeah, not too worried about that.
Okay.
I will say that we probably want to figure out more on the SKU side. Think about that some more, depending on how many of those we're delivering. But but in general, yeah, like if it's as long as we have a link to a statement of work, it's pretty quick because partners don't have access to the automation piece, unlike the internal PMO team.
Totally. And there is an opportunity, I would say on the SKU side a little bit, just say if it's a consulting block, we're kind of going through this where the EM team is going back to almost like double confirm. So perhaps there's an opportunity to adjust things at the PS quote level once we actually identify the service we're providing. But I don't know if that's too complicated and messes with the statement of work consistency. But I guess if we can add in like a service offering and the delivery kits once we get that identified layer through the EM team on SKUs, would that be useful, you think?
Yeah, I expect some of those extra fields to move into probably PS quote to some
Yeah.
extent. And I expect that to be sorted out probably before we even do a full transition to the delivery team.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, some of those extra pieces, and we're starting to kind of work with the PS Quote folks on that a bit. I think I can
Oh,
say that since
cool.
we're live streaming, but we're trying to figure out a way at least to support some of those extra metrics or extra
Excellent.
pieces of information that will influence how we set up a delivery project.
Hey.
Federico, I saw you had your hand up. Was that your question too, or did you have something else?
No, sorry, it was the cat bumping into the keyboard.
Excellent. We most of us can relate at some point.
Yep. Keep them out when I'm in calls.
Any other questions out there?
From my side.
Excellent. Well, as always, if you do have any comments, questions, concerns, please email myself, Gmail or GitLab, or just drop a comment in the Enablement Office docs, and we will try to get those answered for you as quickly as possible. If there's nothing else, thanks all for joining us today. Michael's true to his word, short and sweet and informative. So thank you much, Michael. For everyone who has a long weekend, have a great weekend. And for the rest of you, well, everyone just have a great weekend. What the heck? And catch you at the next one. Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Everyone, see y'all.
Thanks, Glenn.
you.
Thanks, Michael.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.